Hey, Julie, can you see my screen with my slides?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I always like to check that before
Thank you so much.
forward. Yeah, so I think the last time we did this, Jillian covered the first half and I picked up, do, I think I picked up here.
Mhm.
So,
Great. And I think for some reason AI is, do you want me to hit stop on that?
I thought I denied it already.
Need stop. Go away, AI. Type read stop. Maybe I have to put in quotation marks. Hmm. All right, so we might as well get started. It's just 1 minute past 4 p.m. our time. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Julie Wilbers. I'm the Director of International Student and Scholar Services here at Vanderbilt, and I'm joined by my colleague, Andrea Petrick, who's the Assistant Director of ISSS. We'll be guiding you through an overview of our office, talk about some of the services that we provide, and then talk a little bit more about the process with some time to ask some questions at the end. So this is the ISSS team. I've already mentioned myself and Andrea. We have Radhika Reddy, who does a lot of our CVIS processing. Julian Hotman, our assistant director. Kelly Mahoney is one of our international student scholar advisors. Meng Ling is the international support coordinator that helps us with a lot of programming and projects. And Peggy Knupp is our senior administrative assistant. We have a lot of experience in higher education. Many of us have lived abroad, speak other languages. So hopefully we have the experience to help you adjust to your new environment and be successful here at Vanderbilt. We assign students and scholars to an advisor within ISSS. So the reason we do that is we hope to have a more nuanced understanding of your academic program or school so that we can better support you and advise you in a way that works best for your academic program and your goals. So depending on what your program is, for those on the call here today, it's likely going to be Brett, Biomedical Research, Education, and Training. If you're admitted into one of those programs, Andrew is going to be your advisor. And we have myself in College of Arts and Science. If you're a graduate student, master's or PhD in arts and science, I will be your advisor. Let's see, who else? Engineering in the graduate school, except for computer science, will be Radhika. And then if you are in computer science, it will be Kelly. I think that's everyone except Peabody. So if you're in the graduate school with a Peabody program, you will be assigned to Andrea. So we do many things to help our international students. One of them is to help you navigate your non-immigrant status. So we advise and support students and scholars attending Vanderbilt in F and J status or other non-immigrant visa categories. We do this through advising appointments, workshops that we host, and other ways, programming that we come up with to help you maintain and understand your non-immigrant status. We also do a lot of advocacy, both on campus and off campus, locally and nationally, to raise awareness through both the Vanderbilt community and the national community of issues important to international students and scholars. So we do things like administer surveys to you to get a better sense of how you're doing and where your issues are, pain points with our office or other areas on and off campus so that we can advocate for you and your long-term support. Adjustment support. So we know that, some of you may be new to the US, some of you may be moving from another place within the US, but depending on where you're coming from, you may already even be in Nashville. It's always an adjustment. It's an adjustment to move to a new place. It's an adjustment to start a new academic program. And specifically if you're new to graduate programs, and we offer programming and what we consider person-centered advising to help you during your transition to Vanderbilt and throughout your time here. We do understand probably more than anyone that the visa process can be difficult to navigate. There's a lot that goes into it, but we are here to support you along the way. We can't always give you definite answers to all of your questions, but we're here to assist you in any way that we can. And then any updates to the fall semester, visa status, immigration updates, pre-arrival information, other important information will be communicated to you. And of course, you may be on this call and you may not require sponsorship in F1 status or J1 status. That's particular to students in the US. If you're in another visa status that already allows you to study, you'll be asked to provide documentation to our office. And although you won't be required to report to our office, or we won't have to oversee your government visa record, you're more than welcome to join our newsletter, our community, attend our events and programming. So here are just a few examples of how we support you. We provide connections to other international students. We have a Facebook group for newly admitted international students. And then we provide you with a link to a GroupMe, which is an app that can connect you with current international students and scholars at Vanderbilt. And you can ask questions, look to see if someone is looking for a roommate. Maybe you're selling your sofa or you want someone to go to the movies with you. That's just an example of how we connect you with other international students and scholars. Then connections to the local community. Andrea's done a wonderful job building these two programs, one called First Friends and the other called EAT, where we connect international students and scholars with families in the community to either build friendships or to host you during holidays at their house for dinner. And that hopefully provides you an opportunity to learn more about the local community and make connections early on. Some examples of our programming and other social connections are our annual Thanksgiving dinner, which is quite popular. We do a few events over the winter break called Winter Staycation for the students who are remaining here over the break. International Education Week is a week that is celebrated nationwide, and it's overseen by the Department of State, but we offer approximately, I'd say 10 to 15 events in coordination with many university offices that are related to anything international. So that's whether celebrating our international students and scholars or opportunities abroad, and anyone is welcome to submit a proposal or participate. And we do host some social events to explore local destinations that can be quite popular. Employment authorization workshops. We offer workshops on curricular practical training, which we won't get into detail here today, but that is work authorization typically related to a required internship for your program. For those in F1 status, optional practical training, which is typically work authorization after you graduate for those in F1 status. And then for those coming in J1 status, academic training is the form of work authorization where you work in your field of study, mostly post completion of your degree. We offer free workshops that you can attend with very qualified immigration attorneys that talk to you generally about immigration options after optional practical training or academic training, which I already referred to. Some of the other examples are a workshop we hosted with an immigration attorney who discussed what is and isn't employment and very gray areas as to what you can and cannot do in the US to earn income. Some other examples: Can I Work? Employment options for F and J students, which provides you with an overview. What is a STEM extension and do I qualify? Which is specific for F1 students who are curious about the 2-year extension of their work authorization after graduation. We send monthly newsletters. We try to communicate with you frequently through monthly newsletters, highlighting reminders, updates from our office, list of events sponsored by our office, other university offices in the community. So we try to be that bridge between you and other offices so that you understand what opportunities exist out there that are going to work best for our international students. And then it's that time of year again where we coordinate with the International Tax Office to provide resources related to tax filing. There are a myriad of student organizations at Vanderbilt, many of which are internationally focused. This is the link if you want to search for an organization, and if you don't find an organization that meets your interests or needs, you can always start one and they will provide you with resources and a process in order to do so. Some examples are the Multicultural Leadership Council, which is a steering committee to over 30 student organizations. And their mission is to address the needs of the cultural minority students and those from historically marginalized communities, as well as educating the campus on issues of diversity and cultural awareness. So one example of that organization is the International Student Council. It unites international students on campus, of course, creating programming to promote cultural diversity to Vanderbilt and Nashville communities. So they do have a networking event, for example, that they're hosting the end of March for those who are interested in learning more about how to network in the US for jobs. All right, Andrea, do I hand it over to you now?
Yeah, so thanks, Julie. So Julie's given you a great overview of what our office does, and then now we're gonna just go into a little bit more detail over questions you're probably thinking about right now, such as how do I get my I-20, or what happens after I get my document and my visa. So we'll go over that in a little bit more detail. So you will not get any formal communication from our office until you have actually accepted your admission offer from Vanderbilt and you've claimed and activated your VUNet ID. We will get your information from Vanderbilt after you've completed those steps. So once you've done that, claimed your VUNet ID, and then accessed your Vanderbilt email, you will get an email from ISSS@vanderbilt.edu with instructions on how to complete your I-20 or DS 2019 request. This will be a request that you'll complete in our online portal system. Once you have received that, and it takes, after we get a complete request, it takes 5 to 7 business days maximum to process the I-20 or DS 2019. Then once you get that document, you will receive an email notification and you can download it and then print it and sign it and use that to complete the next steps. Now, just to clarify, some students may be coming on an F1 visa, others may be coming on a J1 visa. If you are seeking an F1 student visa, you will be requesting the form I-20. And that's the document that gives general information about you and your academic program here. And you'll take that to the embassy and you'll keep it with you throughout the whole course of your program. If you are seeking a J1 exchange visitor visa, you will get the same document essentially, but it's called a DS 2019. So when we say I-20 or DS 2019, that's what we mean. So I won't go into too much detail about this, but depending on your situation, you may be eligible for an F or a J visa. Anyone who's admitted to a degree-seeking program at Vanderbilt is eligible for an F1 visa. Not everyone is eligible for a J. You're only eligible for a J visa if you're receiving a substantial portion of funding from non-personal or family funds. So a common example of this might be a PhD student who is getting full funding from Vanderbilt, or a student who is receiving a government scholarship from their home country government. There are some advantages and disadvantages to each. One of the main benefits of the J1 visa is that if you're coming with your spouse or unmarried children under 21, they can study full or part-time. They can also apply for work authorization. Dependents who come on an F2 visa are more limited in what they can do. They cannot apply for work authorization. Both F and J visas have options for work authorization after graduation. But the J visa does come with a possible requirement to return home, after you've completed your program for 2 years, or requiring to get a waiver of that requirement. So a lot of things to consider, and we don't want to go into too much detail right now, but if you do have questions about what is better for your situation, feel free to schedule an appointment or email your ISSS advisor to have that conversation. In the I-20 or DS 2019 request, you'll have to upload some documents. So this will include your admission letter. This will include financial support documents. So you'll need to demonstrate that you have enough funding for, if you're coming on an F1 visa for 1 year of study, if you're coming on a J visa for the entire duration of your program. So you can submit like bank statements. If you're getting funding from Vanderbilt, your admission letter typically includes that information. And there's more detail in the I-20 request itself over what kinds of financial documents we will accept. You'll also need to upload a copy of your passport. And then if you're currently in the US, maybe you're on OPT or you're finishing up your degree at another institution, there will be an additional form that you'll need to complete, and you'll need to upload copies of your current immigration documents. Once your I-20 or DS 2019 is processed, you will get an email notification. We can now issue these documents electronically, although you will still have to print out the document. You can't just take your phone to the embassy and show it to the officer on your phone. You have to have the hard copy. So you'll need to print it, sign it, and then use that and keep it with you throughout the whole course of your program. Also, once you get it, make sure that you look at it carefully. And if you have any questions about it, or if you see a mistake, contact your ISSS advisor. If there's a typo on it, we obviously want to get that corrected before you go to your visa appointment. Now, if you're already in the US on an F or a J visa, you'll still complete the I-20 request, but you will also need to communicate with the international office at your current institution. So this is the institution that currently has your CVIS record. And then complete whatever processes they require to transfer your record to Vanderbilt. On our end, we will be able to process your I-20 or DS 2019 once you've submitted the request and once your current school has released that CVIS record to us. Once you have your I-20 or DS 2019, you'll get the information that you need to proceed. So one thing you'll need to do is pay a CVIS fee. This is a fee that goes to the Department of Homeland Security. CVIS is something you'll hear about a lot, but it's essentially an electronic database with information about international students in the US. So the Department of Homeland Security charges an administrative fee that you'll need to pay, and you'll need to take that receipt with you to your interview. You can pay that once you have your I-20 because you need that CVIS ID, which will be on the I-20. And then you can book your appointment at the embassy. It's always best to apply at an embassy or consulate in your home country because they're better suited to review cases from applicants in your country. If you go to another country, they may not be as familiar with documents from your country. If you have any questions about that, or if you're thinking about applying in a third country, maybe talk to your ISSS advisor. And then keep us updated about your situation, especially if you have any delays or issues. If something happens, we may not be there's really not much that our office can do to like expedite processes or overturn decisions. But what we can do is first of all, track that information for our advocacy efforts. And also we can certainly help you with updating your I-20 or DS 2019 in a worst case scenario where you need to defer your admission. Going back to dependent, so if you are coming with a spouse or an unmarried child under the age of 21, they are also able to get their own I-20 or DS 2019 and apply for a dependent visa. If that is the case, you will have to provide additional funding to show that you've got sufficient funds for both yourself and your dependents. And just as a reminder, J2 spouses can apply for work authorization and they have no restriction on study. F2 spouses are a little bit more limited in what they can do. They can study part-time, but they cannot apply for work authorization. However, regardless of their status, there are resources at Vanderbilt that are open to them. We encourage, and we actually love it when families come to our programming. All of our programming is family friendly too. You can also, or there's also an English language center at the university, and they offer support such as conversation groups and classes for spouses and partners of Vanderbilt students. We also have a women's center that has a parenting group. So those are just some examples of the resources that would be available to them. Once you get your I-20 or DS 2019, you'll also get an email with a link to a pre-arrival module to complete. And this just has some general information about next steps, such as paying that CVIS fee, applying for your visa, and then some of the things to expect, in your transition, such as health insurance, completing your CVIS check-in, and then housing information. In addition to that, we will host a series of pre-arrival sessions on Zoom over the summer. And these are designed to give you some important information to help with your transition to Vanderbilt and to Nashville. Examples of sessions that we're anticipating offering this summer include a session on how to use your health insurance. We'll have a housing panel with current international students talking about their experiences finding housing. There will be a session on getting a driver's license and navigating transportation options in Nashville. So you'll get an email later this spring with information on that. And then in addition, you will have a mandatory in-person orientation before the start of classes. And this orientation will cover information related to maintaining your status, your FRJ status, including what kind of employment opportunities are available within the parameters of your visa. So we're offering international student orientation on 3 different dates, but you only have to attend one. So you can choose the one that works best for you, given your program schedule and your travel plans, but you do have to attend one. And again, more information on that will be coming later. And then one last thing, when you arrive in the US, you will need to do a CVIS check-in. This is a requirement from the US government. The term check-in is a little misleading because it's a virtual process, so you don't have to physically come to our office to do it, but you do need to provide us some documents, and then we use that to confirm to the US government that you have arrived. This is also, it's required for your visa, but it's also required before you can apply for a social security number or a driver's license, before you can fill out the paperwork to start on-campus employment. So you'll want to make sure that you do this as soon as you arrive in the United States. And then here's our, these are all of our individual emails. So based on your portfolio, you'll contact the advisor, and you can email them or you can schedule an appointment with them. Even if you're not an admitted student, you can still schedule an appointment with your assigned advisor if you have like any lingering questions. And then I guess at that point, we'll just transition to any questions you may have. Feel free to unmute yourself or drop a question in the chat, and then Julie and I will answer your questions.
So there was a question about the 3 different sessions. So you only have to attend one orientation session. Those are in person, and you can choose which one you want to attend. They are from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. Is that correct, Andrea?
9 to 12.
9 to 12. And then Andrea, the other question was, does the funding received through teaching or research assistantships typically cover the estimated expenses? Yes, so in the graduate school, if you are receiving full funding, meaning they're paying tuition fees, health insurance, and you're getting a stipend, it should cover the estimated expenses required to request an I-20. And in our estimates, we made sure that that would be the case for all students that received funding in the graduate school. If it seems like it's not enough when you're doing the calculation, don't hesitate to reach out to your assigned ISSS advisor. We can make sure you're looking at the correct numbers and make sure that we're not, or you're not overlooking something. Other questions? Yes.
So I know that I was an international student in the US for undergrad as well. So I know there's a 20-hour work limit on students. Is the work that I'm supposed to do with my advisor in a PhD program count towards that 20-hour work limit that you have? And so that's how that's decided?
Yeah, so if you're on a service stipend, that means that, you're teaching or you're doing research, that counts as 20 hours a week. So during any official school breaks where you're not required to be enrolled, you can work more than that, I'm sure you learned at your other institution, up to full time. Andrea, anything you want to add to that?
I guess the only other thing I'll say is that does mean that for most PhD students, you typically can't take an additional on-campus job unless you're able to work it out with your program to reduce your hours. So yeah, that pretty much is going to take all your on-campus employment.
And there are
Yes, thank you.
also policies within the graduate school that restrict employment you can do outside of, your commitment to the department. Now, that's not related to immigration necessarily, but of course, they want to make sure that you're not distracted from other activities. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Okay, great. Andrea, I see a question in the chat box. Is it possible to change the visa status between F1 and J1 during a graduate studies if necessary? Very astute question. How would you answer that?
Yeah, so I'd say it's technically possible. However, changing status between one or the other can take a lot of time, and you essentially either have to apply for a change of status through a government agency called USCIS, which can take a long time, or you have to leave and apply for the new visa at an embassy abroad. So if and we have had that happen, like particularly if somebody gets married at some point over the course of their program and they'd like for their spouse to be able to work, the J visa can be a great option. Definitely you'd want to talk with your advisor, your ISSS advisor about timelines, because that can take some time to happen.
And I'm putting in the chat box, it's a long link. I wish I could oh, wait, and I found a way to link it. Hang on. Okay, it's a comparison document between the F and J visa categories. And Andrea just recently updated this. They're definitely different visa categories, and there are advantages and disadvantages to both, depending on your own situation, where you're from, what your degree is. Do you have a spouse that wants to work? All of those questions. And like Andrea mentioned, you can switch from one to the other, but you want to be very careful about talking to your assigned ISSS advisor about the timing. You want to make sure you maximize work authorization. And don't hesitate to make an appointment with your assigned ISSS advisor to determine which one is most beneficial for you. And we can help you kind of think through, depending on your priorities, what you'd like to pursue. I think we missed another question. Do international graduate students, PhD students often face difficulties bringing their dependents if they do not have additional funding beyond what's provided by the university? What percentage of international graduate students are accompanied by dependents during their studies? Andrea, you want to take the first stab at that, and then I can chime in?
Yeah, I guess the answer to the first question about the funding is it depends. With your funding package, and it can also depend on how many dependents you're coming with. I mean, if you're going to have to show additional funding for each dependent. So if you're coming with a spouse and children, that's probably going to be beyond like what kind of funding you get from the university, and you might have to show like personal funds. So, in terms of difficulties of bringing dependents, I mean, again, depending on your situation, that could be a bit of a barrier, but one thing to consider, you don't necessarily have to bring them with you immediately. Sometimes students will come on their own first and kind of get established here and, find housing, get an idea for the general cost of living, and then, bring their family over. That's one option. There's no policy that says they must come with you immediately. So that could be something to consider. In terms of what percentage of international graduate students are accompanied by dependents, I don't know that we do have that number, but I will say we don't have, I'd say, a lot of people with dependents, but we do have a sizable percentage, I'd say. Julie, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, we do have numbers where we combine our students and scholars, and when we say scholars, we typically mean our J1 research scholars that aren't enrolled in a program, but they're here to do research, like our postdocs or visiting faculty or and I think combined, there were 160 families. So, not a huge percentage of the population, but 160 families, I feel like is a good amount to connect with. And one of our goals is to provide more support for dependents, maybe some programming. So, if you're interested, make sure to let us know, and we can try to create some connections between dependents, because I know that is definitely an area that folks can use some additional support. What else? Don't be shy. So if you haven't received the initial email from us and you have accepted your offer of admission, once it's gotten to a few business days, don't hesitate to reach out to your assigned ISSS advisor to make sure everything looks good. As you can imagine with universities, we have very specific processes in place where it has to feed from one system to the next. So give it a little bit of time, but if you haven't heard anything, don't hesitate to reach out. We do send it to, I think Andrea mentioned this, to your Vanderbilt email. We've been trying to then later add on your personal email to the CC email. So when we send something, it goes to your CC email, your personal email. But of course, we rely on you to check your Vanderbilt email, and that's going to be the primary source of information. Yeah, sure.
If no one has another question, I'll ask another one. So you mentioned the transfer from a different call from transferring your service ID, basically. I know that applies for if you're going from F1 to another F1, but for people who are coming from an H1B, so I'm currently working in California on an H1B visa. I think that typically doesn't come under service. So is there anything I need to do for transferring, especially because I'm gonna be in my job till the first week of June. So I'm staying on an H1B till June, and then I'll transfer out. So is there any timelines and specific things I need to watch out for? I know there are certain deadlines where if you apply for a visa, you automatically forfeit your other one and things like that. So some clarity on those type of visa categories would be great.
Yeah, so you're going to want to plan that quite carefully, because you're going to want to either apply for a change of status in the US from H1 to F1, or you're going to want to take that I-20, go abroad, apply for the F1 visa stamp, and re-enter that way. So it's either apply for a change of status or what we call re-entering in that new visa status. So if you're ending in June, that's when your employment ends, we'll have to look at whether that timing would work. So which program are you in?
I'm a graduate PhD student for Peabody,
Okay.
LPO, Leadership Policy and Organization.
Okay, great. So Andrea is your advisor. So it might be good to set up an appointment with her, and then you can kind of strategize that time frame and think about either when you want to apply or when you want to re-enter if you plan on traveling. But yeah, you wouldn't need to get that new status.
Yeah, I plan to re-enter, and I already scheduled
Okay.
the appointment, but thank you for clarifying.
Okay, great. Anything else? Any other ways that we can support you? Or if you receive any emails that are confusing, don't hesitate to let us know. We know it's a lot. I highly recommend that you attend the pre-arrival sessions. The students that attend get a lot out of them. If you can't attend live, you can attend, you can watch the recording later. We provide access to all of that. And it really kind of sets you up for success, so that we don't necessarily go into a lot of detail on these topics, but it allows you to begin thinking about these things. And when an issue or something arises, you'll have some framework to refer back to, and hopefully, you'll contact our office or the on-campus resource that we've invited for whatever topic that we were discussing. So those tend to be quite popular, and we highly encourage you to attend.
And I just received a question from a student. So we talked a little bit about transfers. Now, let's say a student's on OPT. So OPT, you just want to make sure that, like, first of all, if you already have a valid F1 visa, even if it has another school's name on it, you don't necessarily have to make a trip outside of the US to renew it. That's also the case even if it's, expired. You can stay in the US on an expired visa. Now, if you do have some travel plans anyway, and you want to go ahead and renew your visa, you would just want to make sure that you get the new I-20 from Vanderbilt first, because you'll need to take that one to the embassy. So depending on your travel plans, and your employment situation, you'll want to choose a transfer release date that is at least a few weeks before you travel, so you have enough time to get your document. And then you can use that new document to apply for your visa.
Sorry, we do have another question. I have a question as I'm filing my new student information form. Do you currently have an active non-immigrant status other than F4J? Does this apply to B1, B2 visa? So that's really getting at, do you have a status in the US that either you plan to use to study, like maybe an H4 dependent of an H1B or something like that, or you plan to apply for change of status from that category to F1 or J1. If you're talking about a visa stamps in your passport that you've used in the past, like B1, B2, and you've used it to enter the US at some other time, we don't need to know about that. The one thing you cannot do is you can never or should never really enter the US in B1, B2 status and then request a change of status immediately to F1 and J1 status. But I'm assuming that's not what the question is. Really what we're getting at is what do we need to be aware of in terms of what status you're currently in and whether you're going to stay in that status or you're going to apply for a change of status or re-enter. I hope that answers that question. If not, let me know. Some really good questions. Okay, regarding the DS 2019, if I have to show some additional funding, is it necessary that covers the whole duration of the program, like a 5-year PhD program? Yes, that is correct. So you'd have to show additional funding if you're bringing dependents. So if you're fully funded PhD student, you're not going to have to show additional funding. But if you are bringing dependents, I'd say you just have a spouse, then it would be the amount per year for the spouse times 5. Or actually, it might even be 6, because I feel like we're issuing documents for 6 years now for PhD students, because that's the average time it's been taking. But Mirko, don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have any additional questions about that and what that amount would be for dependents. Okay. Any final call for questions? If not, we hope that we do end up seeing you at Vanderbilt.
I have a quick final question. So did I hear correctly that when we're going into our visa appointment and providing proof of funding, it's enough to just bring assuming you're in a fully funded PhD 5-year funded program, to just bring that letter and show, hey, I'm getting like $30,000 for 9 months of work, and then the summer funding and all that, and this is my funding, and that's enough
Unless you have dependents, but other than that, yes.
for a single person.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, if anything comes up, please reach out to us. And we will be your partners in crime over the next, depending on how long you're in your master's or PhD program. So we look forward to getting to know you.
Thank you so much for coming today.
It's nice to meet you guys.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.